James Gunn has clarified his comments that Marvel was killed for putting out too much content. Roll this up over at phantompulse.com. You can find the link in the description below. I encourage you to head on over there, become a subscriber, join our newsletter so you don't miss any of our pop culture news and analysis. We do between 10 to 15 articles every single day between myself and co-owner John De La Rose, as well as some of our guest writers and individuals that we syndicate, such as Isaac Young and Brian Niemeyer. A lot of stuff over there that we can't even put on YouTube because they suppress it. So you definitely want to head on over, become a subscriber, join our newsletter so you're not missing out on anything that we are covering every single day. So with that out of the way, let's get into this here. In a wide-ranging interview with Rolling Stone, interviewer Brian Hyatt said this: over at Marvel, they've been pretty open about the fact that they realize what's gone wrong over the past few years. They put out too much stuff. I think that is a little bit disingenuous. I think that is the narrative that the Walt Disney Company has been trying to push out there. Obviously, you've heard statements from Bob Iger. He's been saying that over the last 2 years or so. Kevin Feige has concurred with it in all of these public statements that they make. But there's a huge elephant in the room, and it's the quality of the films as well, right? And Bob Iger has kind of hinted at that a little bit in some of his statements, and it's not just the amount of content. They have hinted that the quality has declined as well. Obviously, I believe that the quality has declined because it has been infected by this SJW ideology that has kind of turned into what is colloquially called the MCU. Obviously, that mainly being pushing feminism, but we know they're going to be pushing gender ideology as well, and they have been doing that, and they're going to be doing it really explicitly in this upcoming Ironheart series. So I think this is a little bit disingenuous here for Hyatt to say that it's just been the too much content being pushed out. There is clearly bigger reasons why than that. And I think the whole too much content is just a bunch of BS anyways. That's just the narrative that Disney and Marvel are spinning. But anyways, Gunn replied saying, in longtime Marvel executive producer Louis D'Esposito said that privately to me. I don't even know if it's really their fault. After Hyatt claimed that putting out so much content was a corporate mandate, Gunn concurred, saying that wasn't fair, it wasn't right, and it killed them. From there, Gunn shared the lessons he's taken away from Marvel's struggles. We have to treat every project as if we're lucky. We don't have the mandate to have a certain amount of movies and TV shows every year. So we're going to put out everything that we think is of the highest quality. We're obviously going to do some good things and some not so good things, but hopefully on average, everything will be as high quality as possible. Nothing goes before there's a screenplay that I personally am happy with. He's then kind of backtracked or clarified on these comments, responding to a post on Meta's thread. You've got this guy, Reginald Andreas, who basically wrote that things have not been good for Marvel since post-Endgame. And he says, but in the past few months, we've had Marvel themselves, Feige, and now even the likes, James Gunn, saying, yes, there was definitely something wrong. It's okay to talk about this. We don't have to save face to spite the other side. Relax. And Gunn says, to be clear, and as is clear in the context of the interview, I didn't say it killed them like they're over, but they were screwed by the situation they had no control over. I don't agree with that. I think they definitely had control over what they were doing. Now, obviously, they were probably instructed to create a number of TV shows to try to get people to subscribe to Disney+. I don't disagree with that idea, but I do think that Marvel was the one who was creatively making the shows. They are the ones who chose to go with WandaVision. They are the ones who chose to do Loki. They were the ones creating those shows. So this idea that they didn't have any control over it, I'm not really buying that. I think that they are part of the Walt Disney Company. Walt Disney Company wanted to launch that Disney Plus streaming service. They wanted Marvel to do that. Kevin Feige was totally fine about it, at least publicly, was talking about how it was going to create this kind of like interconnected TV and movie universe, and it was all going to like flow and connect together, and he seemed really excited about it. And now that it has totally and utterly failed, we're getting this narrative that they were just too much content, burning people out, superhero fatigue, etc., that we've heard over the last couple of years, and then just fatigue on the creative side, which I just find is, I just don't buy that whatsoever at all, because they clearly brought in new people. They had different showrunners, they had different producers, etc., that were coming in and working with them on this television side as well as what they were doing on the movie side. So this idea that they were somehow burnt out just not really buying it. Now, you could argue that Kevin Feige might have been stretched a little too thin because he wasn't delegating properly and he was trying to keep all the fingers in the pies. Now, I think there's probably a good claim for that, but this idea that like somehow Marvel Studios, the entire company and the people that work there were exhausted, just I'm not buying that whatsoever. I'm just not buying it. Anyways, Gunn goes on and says they're on the other side of that now, which is good. I don't think there's any evidence that they are. I mean, Ironheart is coming out, right? And they've got this feminist Fantastic Four film coming out as well. Sacrificed everything for streaming craze, killed many good things by forcing a demand for content that couldn't possibly be met. That's not true. I think they did meet it, right? I mean, you saw this from other streamers too. They were putting out the content. I mean, Netflix for sure was definitely churning out a lot of stuff. Now, was it high quality? Some was, some wasn't, right? Again, the idea that they weren't meeting the demand, I don't agree with that. I think they clearly were putting out a demand for the content. I mean, I think there's still a demand for content. So I think that's just I just don't agree with that. Putting movies on TV before they had a proper theatrical run and much more. I think that's still happening, right? I mean, there's still movies that are going to video on demand 2 weeks after they're released in the theaters. And that is actually a business model, right? Especially if they're lower budget. The going into the theaters is part of like the marketing for the VOD and for the streaming. And that's kind of where a lot of the producers are making their money, is through the VOD, is through the streaming. It's not just in the box office. Anyways, he goes on and says, the insanity has died down and balanced out everywhere. Thank God. And then in response to another comment, he says, to be fair, I thought you meant it in the context of the effort required to produce all of this content exhausted them. And Gunn says, well, that is simultaneously correct because it was an impossible task. I just addressed that already. But as far as this claim that there's too much content and that killed Marvel, this is a retread of what we saw from Bob Iger and Kathleen Kennedy when their Golden Goose Star Wars, that creatively bankrupt trilogy that they made, massively bombed. And huge diminishing returns, right? $2 billion with The Force Awakens, 1.3 Last Jedi, just over $1 billion with The Force Awakens or The Rise of Skywalker, and then in between that you had Solo, which didn't even do $400 million. First Star Wars film to actually lose money at the box office. They turned the once gold mine of a franchise to ash, and they were rolling this out, saying this stuff, like trying to create this narrative. Oh, we were just creating too much, and it was easy to point to Marvel, who was churning out 2 to 3 films a year with a resounding success, to see how utterly empty the talking point was. It's like, this is happening in your same company. What are you even talking about? They're still doing well. So too much content is not the problem. The problem is a lack of quality storytelling that has been exacerbated by Hollywood's embrace of social justice warrior ideology. Furthermore, if too much superhero content was a problem, why in the world would James Gunn and DC be making more superhero content, right? Like, if he actually believed that them creating too much content was a problem, why would you be creating more of similar content, right? Like, if that's the problem, if there's too much of it is the problem, you're mandated to create all of this stuff and you're creating more of it, why would that be the problem? I mean, again, and then it also goes back to his claim about this demand, right? What does he say here? He says that killed many good things by forcing a demand for content that couldn't possibly be met. Well, he's clearly making more superhero content to meet one would assume, meet a demand for that superhero content. So there's clearly a demand for it, right? And he's trying to meet it. But again, like the idea that there's too much content, even like on the most superficial analysis of his claim here, it just doesn't fly. It doesn't pass the sniff test. It doesn't pass the smell test. Why would you be making more superhero content if you think creating too much content is what killed Marvel? Doesn't really make a lot of sense, does it? So I think this is a bunch of BS PR talking points coming from Disney. Let me know what you guys make of what he had to say here about too much content killing Marvel and his clarification of those contents. Let me know in the comments below.
Why would you be afraid of the people? Why are you not afraid of God instead of man?